a good spot. But this is with the boot camp format, you just have to get a certain amount done per week, so you can't spend way too much time on research. So take big swings and write a wacky, crazy, fun thing while you build the sort of fundamentals here. And get used to sharing your work at even early stages, I would say. So with me and with your fellow students and with everyone, I know it can be difficult to hear these big notes at early stages, but it's important to start to develop ideas in this collaborative way and get used to incorporating feedback even at even when you're just starting to work on a project. Also, just please use your real name if you're going to be enrolling in the course, or anything that sounds like a real name instead of a username. We can't use usernames in the industry, and we all would just want to stay, relatively industry perfect. This is to some extent training for how to work in the industry, more so than it is just how to write scripts. So just try to encourage that as much as we can. If for some reason, again, for privacy, you really, really don't want to use your real name, then just pick a real name. All right, what's a log line? Your entire story distilled to a sentence or two, but if it's two, it has to actually need 2 sentences. And I think you can summarize a script like Inception in 1 single sentence. So if your script is more complicated than Inception, like that, if you have 2 sentences, I'm going to ask, is your premise more complicated than Inception? And if the answer is yes, then I'm going to seriously question, does it need to be? Try to get 1 sentence that implies visual action, tells us what is the inciting incident and who is the protagonist with some unique adjective that describes them and suggests what their internal journey will be. We want to know what they want, which is their kind of Act 2 goal, what's in their way, and what happens if they sort of fail. And all these things need to kind of be implied by this. And we want to know kind of what is the stakes or the ticking clock that is going to be moving the story forward. So here's the general template that I use. Again, you don't have to do this exact thing every time, but these are the kind of questions we're going to have. So after inciting incident, an adjective protagonist must conflict before or in order to stakes or ticking clock. So that's going to, if you don't know what else to do, start with that, and then you can start moving things around and changing them. But this is the place I always recommend starting. Okay, so a couple other things about loglines before we share ours. Remember, we're looking for stakes that are in some way relatable, or we sometimes say primal, meaning things that almost anyone can relate to wanting. So life and death, love, revenge, things like this. That's anyone, of any culture, of any time could theoretically pick this up and understand at least the basics. It shouldn't be too cerebral or kind of out there, or like about people's internal feelings and things like this. Those kinds of stories are often better suited for books or plays, whereas movies are about people doing stuff, and like framing them around events and activities is so much more important than having people. We want to suggest that these aren't going to just be movies about people sitting or standing around and thinking or talking. I mean, if they are talking in some genres such as courtroom, then that can be dramatic on its own, but make sure that that is clear in the logline itself. Also, we want to make sure this idea does not seem too big, which would be better suited for a mini-series, or too small, which would be better as like a sketch or something like that. So movies should be visual, dynamic, and about people doing stuff. I should know immediately what we are going to be watching your protagonist do for 90 minutes. So at the end of reading it, I shouldn't be wondering, for instance, like, oh shoot, my webcam is not connected, or is connected and it's not working. Okay, well, let's stick with just browser for now. So we want to know that your story is about people doing something with a visual element to it and a tangible goalpost. And it won't just be some completely nebulous journey that seems to have no way to know if we're progressing through it. So tangible goals, urgency, and immediacy. It should sort of be evident to us what would happen if the protagonist were to fail or to not go on this quest. It should just be clear that the story has an audience, and this is a story that could only happen once in this one specific way. This is not like a series of repeatable situations, or like a description of a broader category of situations or something like that. This should seem like it's just one thing that happened one time, and it should seem like it's a person's story. So don't describe in your logline it's about a group of people. Don't describe it's about a couple that does this or a couple that does that. A couple's not a character. We need a main character. A group of teenagers is not a main character. I know slasher movie fans hate to hear it, but it's just not. You got to have a main character to frame the entire story around. So just pick one single person, and this should be one time in this person's life, this situation unfolded in this way that it only ever could have happened this way. And also just that internal journey is being hinted at. Often in the adjective that you pick for your main character, it's going to tell us some trait that they are struggling with or something that's otherwise just relevant or germane to the story, which is going to be a journey that is interweaving with this external one so that we kind of resolve one to resolve the other. We resolve both at once, and kind of the magic of movies and movie type storytelling is just watching how that internal and external journey kind of like keep interlocking and twisting with one another until they end up in interesting shapes by the end. But ultimately, they are very tied together, and you're not quite sure how one will affect the other. And the movie is an act of surprising the audience in the ways that those two threads intertwine. So, your character will change in interesting ways through that external journey, and the internal one will sort of showcase the theme of the story, and just try to avoid making it sound like it's going to be a recurring situation. Okay, once all that's in place, we want a unique and fascinating hook, some kind of sense of irony or new or surprising POV, or just sense of originality. What's the last movie you guys saw that you were like, I've never seen anything like that? I have some examples. I just want to hear what you guys have. Go ahead.
I can think of one. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. You can go first. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say some irony or a twist.
Sorry, what was the movie? So the question was, what's the last movie you saw that you've seen that you were like, I've never seen any story like that before? And I couldn't quite hear what your answer was. Can you say one more time? Okay, maybe not, or maybe something's up with maybe having some tech problems. So go ahead. How to Disappear if you want to weigh in.
Yeah, one that comes to mind recently is Inside Out, the Pixar movie. I would say that's pretty original. I haven't seen anything quite like that. I know it's animated.
Yeah, it's sort of personifying the emotions. Yeah, that's kind of cool. Yeah. It's reminded me of, I would say, like something like Osmosis Jones would be like the closest thing that we had to that before, right? But that was the difference being that it's like the sort of like touchy-feely version of Osmosis Jones, because it's just like concepts rather than actual biological cells and stuff. But yeah, no, it was pretty original. I would agree.
Yeah, I'm trying to rack my brain. I mean, I'm thinking of all the movies. It seems like every movie is some kind of iteration of another one, but I'll have to try to go through the catalog of movies I've watched recently, see if there's one that sticks out.
Are we all free to share?
Yeah, I guess that's sort of interesting mashup of familiar elements. Yeah, go ahead and share if you'd like to.
I recently did a rewatch of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
And go ahead and tell us about it. That's a pretty unique one, right?
Yeah. I actually did it in like a try to understand the story structure a bit better. And I guess it's kind of like the unique thing about it is like, yeah, at the beginning you kind of think that it's you might think, oh, it's all chronological, and you find out it's like not really. And that, like, of course, like, oh yeah, it's like surreal and stuff, even though there's like a lot of movies that are surreal, but it's kind of like, yeah, that combination of everything and the way that like kind of like the A and B stories are like kind of like seem separate for a really long time, and then they kind of only connect at the end. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it's really cool how that script intercuts between the different sort of storylines going on, like the one where Elijah Wood's character is sort of the ticking clock because he is getting closer to Clementine, and using the same memories that he learns from Joel in order to make her fall in love with him, which is really kind of like an interesting and clever way to add tension to the movie in a story that otherwise really wouldn't have that sense of like finality and like urgency to it. Does that make sense? So I think that really makes that the whole story kind of comes together because of that in a lot of ways. And yeah, I really like it as well. It is quite nice, and quite hard to figure out. And the original script is much weirder than what we ended up with. I think Spike Jonze does a good job of sort of like making Charlie Kaufman scripts make more sense to me, at least. And not just the Swiss Army Man. Yeah, I agree, Nacho. I don't think there's anything like that one. That is I don't even know what genre that is. Comedy adventure, dark comedy, surreal, magical realism, dark comedy adventure, I guess you would say. But yeah, you gotta love when you see something that's totally original, but it doesn't happen all that much. Almost everything is going to be some sort of variation of things that have come before. So don't worry way too much about originality. Like, it's more important that you be able to write feature films beginning to end in 8 to 12 weeks than it is that you be able to write completely brand new you don't have to, your job isn't to write groundbreaking scripts, basically. Your job is to write scripts. So keep that in mind. We can look at this question of how's it been done in terms of originality. So I use this little checklist myself. So has it been done recently? Has it been done with the same approach or style or point of view? Or what's the last one? High quality or popularity. And if only one of those applies, then you're good. So for instance, something popular, but that's not recent or in the same sort of style or approach, or something recent, but that was not of high quality and did not have the same approach. See what I mean? So just pick one of these, and if that's the case, then you're pretty much fine. But ultimately, this is kind of you don't really have to worry that much about originality. Just remember that. So here's some log lines of mine. I want to point out the one for hint line is 2 sentences. This was written in accordance with my manager's notes at the time, so I probably would have found a way to do it in just 1 sentence if it had been up to me. But this is what we sort of ended up with, and we can just see, I guess, a little bit how these are like not all of these follow that exact format that I was showing you before, because it doesn't really have to if you're able to imply the answers to those sort of questions. Like in the first one, let's look at Peter and the Wolves, where I have a sensitive boy in Nazi-besieged Leningrad must hunt down the cannibal that ate his friend. I don't include the ticking clock of, or else the cannibal will then eat him, because I feel that was implied enough by what was going on that we know he's tracking down this dangerous murderer that murdered his friend. And I think that in slasher, like horror type stories, or stalker horror type stories, it's kind of baked into the idea. It's baked into the basics of this, the idea that the killer is going to be getting closer and closer to your protagonist as the movie goes on. So Peter and the Wolves is almost styled like a giallo style slasher thriller, basically. And I figured that was clear enough that I could save those words and I wanted to end with the more emotionally punctuated sentiment of the cannibal that ate his friend, I feel would draw people into the movie more. It was worth just ending it there rather than over explaining it. So anyway, you get the idea that you don't actually have to stick exactly to that format of when inciting incident occurs, adjective protagonist must blah, blah, blah. But do start with that, because even with the ones of mine that I have not ended up with those, try to start with that, and just to make sure that you have all those pieces in place. Any questions about any of my log lines or about anything we've talked about so far?
I just had a quick question about your perspective on going back to like originality with films. I was wondering just what your perspective is on when like Hollywood goes wild. Let's just say with like possession horror, and they all just, for a lot of them, it doesn't seem like there's like anything really distinct that sets them apart. Yet they're getting made. I just wonder what your take is on that. Like when there's some kind of like wave of a genre or something like that.
Are you asking like, should you be aiming to write things that are of popular genres?
Sort of, yeah. I guess I'm asking that, yeah. Especially when it just seems like, I don't know if you agree with this. I'm wondering if you do. Like, I just think of possession horror because it seems like there's like a million of them.
Yeah.
That don't really seem oftentimes really that distinct. So I just want to get your perspective on it, actually.
Sure. So yeah, there are always going to be certain trends, and certain things are just easier to make than others. Like for instance, low budget horror is always going to be easy to make, and possession type stories don't require a lot of special effects. So you can just look at the simple math of production to see if a certain genre is being flooded. There's going to be a reason why, and it's often going to be because it's like it is, people are watching them, and people will click on anything with an upside down cross on the front. Like, So there's certain things that you can just get, like lower budget production companies are trying to get a return on their investment, and so I think earlier in our chat in our server earlier this today, people were talking about like Hallmark and Lifetime style romance movies that just like are all almost the same script.
Yeah,
like
I always imagined that there was like there's like a fact. I mean, they just use the same template. That's what I always imagine with those, or like
I think
Christmas
they do.
movies.
Yeah,
Like,
I believe they do have an actual checklist of things that they need
yeah,
to include.
yeah.
So these
Okay.
things exist because certain markets like to see the same sort of stuff. Some people will watch literally any movie with an upside down cross. Some people will watch anything with the Christmas in the title.
Right.
And those markets are just kind of like easy targets. So as someone trying to break into screenwriting, you're trying to break in though, to show that you have ideas that stand out and are radically different. And those mostly the things you're talking about that are the things that are like clones of each other are going to be driven by small production companies and writer directors who are trying to just cash in on a trend. Basically, they're not trying to stand out for their writing, and they're not trying to get repped or signed. So, like, that's not always the case. And obviously, I know there are some exceptions, and sometimes a rep or signed or really good writer will write a possession movie or whatever it is. But the point is, we're trying to stand out and impress people and have writing samples be circulating out in the world so that we're able to get these very difficult Hollywood writing jobs, of which there are not many openings. And ultimately, it's easier to get a job on an MLB team than it is to get a Hollywood writing job. So it's like, got to make sure that your work is standing out and not just being like, I can follow a trend.
I love hearing you say that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. No worries. It's all, if you're just considering getting into this, you should know it takes a long time and it sucks. So don't do it. No, just kidding. You should. If you're here, that means that you understand that it's really hard and very frustrating, I will say. But if you're here and you are aware of that, then you know that you must do it. Okay. So any other questions?
I have a question. So I was reading a book. It's actually Save the Cat, but for novels, and there was a chapter about how to write a logline there, but of course it's for novels. And in there, they advise to essentially in your logline to hint at either like the midpoint climax or the midpoint reversal. And I was wondering if that's like an acceptable thing to have in your logline for a feature film script or not at all.
A midpoint? I mean, you can if you really want to. You don't. I haven't often seen the need to do that. If the way that you're describing the sort of premise of the, you should be describing what happens basically in the second act. Yes, and the midpoint is in the second act, and some people say it's this exact direct center of the that hinge between Act 2A and Act 2B. So, if you need to suggest what that's going to be, then you can. But I normally just say, give us the character, the inciting incident, and they must now do what that's their kind of Act 2 goal. I guess a lot of the time, maybe where that comes from is the Act 2 goal is sort of resolved at the midpoint. So yeah, that can definitely be something. I can't give a hard yes or no on it, but it makes a certain amount of sense in the way that I just described. Got it. Long answer, but yeah, sure. Hope that helps.
All right, yeah, it does. Thank
you. Okay. So we're going to move on. Come on, slideshow. I know we go. Okay, so we're looking for high concept loglines ideally because these are the ones that we can give the best feedback on. So high concept, let's learn what this means really quick. High concept does not mean more complicated. It doesn't really have to do with the genre or budget or subject matter. It's an engaging, self-contained premise with broad appeal that will bloom in the mind to suggest conflict structure and essentially the whole movie. We say it, quote, writes itself. Obviously, that's kind of pedant or, reductive to say that anything writes itself. Obviously, you still have to do a ton of work, but it should be something that the average listener or viewer can imagine a few scenes from, and they will, smile to themselves and say, yeah, I would see that. So that's harder to do when you're not doing high concept and you're describing more kind of slice of life or things like that. In loglines, those don't really stand out. So we're looking for interesting character plus interesting situations. Execution dependent loglines are going to be ones that rely on complex character study, cinematography, or just other stuff that's going to relate more to the artistic execution of this thing than than the script itself. Saying something like, well, this will be a comedy just because the characters will be funny. it like you can maybe get away with that to some extent, but remember that if it's a comedy, then the situation should seem like it's funny. Either the character or situation, something about it needs to seem like it's funny just from reading the logline. Setup or supplementary material might be required to understand the basics of the characters or who they are in the world or all this stuff. If it takes place in some original world that you've designed yourself and that you've been working on in your own novelistic cinematic universe or something for a long time, that is too execution dependent. Straight biopics or historical pieces with no unique perspective or hook. So just saying this is about the life of Abraham Lincoln. It's like, what Lincoln doing what? Focus that more. You're gonna have to pick some specific period in Lincoln's life or some kind of narrative like central focal point to revolve that story around to give it uniqueness and specificity. And finally, anything with just this essential but unique to convey conceit or world or sense of style that might be required to understand the story. Okay, so let's actually start to look at loglines now. I want to see how many we are going to be looking at today. So post your loglines in the chats because we have half an hour left. Right? Oh, wait, no. What time do we start? I am very out of it. 6:28. Do we start at 6? Nacho, what time does this class go to? Gotcha. Okay, to 7. Okay, thanks a lot. All right. So let's take a look at some loglines. Go ahead and post in the free bootcamp class channel on the left side of the Discord window. Scroll down past all of the discussion chat channels and find free bootcamp class at the bottom right above tech help. Anyone have a question on how to find our chats? Does anyone have a logline to share?
Oh yeah, I'm finding mine. Just gonna...
I posted mine earlier. Do you want me to? I went over.
Yeah, if you could repost it just so we have it at the bottom here. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Ray. Let's get a few more, and then we will start going down this list. And you should be ready to talk about the story and answer questions. Ray says, put me at the bottom of the priority list. Okay, if you want me to, we can. Thanks, Joe. Micromedia Titan says, sits in trying to write an alien alphabet. Well, it could always base a story around an alien alphabet. I think they did that. It was called Arrival. Thanks, Nick, for this one. Grow up. All right, let's start going down. And so if Ray wants us to put her at the bottom priority, we'll start with Joe. So this is one you've been refining for quite a while, Joe. Why don't you read this out for us? Joe, you are on mute, just so you know, if you do not see that. Are you with us, Joe?
I see the what is this movie about screen.
So I'm asking Joe M here if he wants to unmute and read his logline out for us. I guess maybe he cannot hear us, or might have stepped away. Oh, he's still on the train. That's right. Okay. So I'll read it out and just give quick feedback on Joe, but then we'll go to someone else. So a South Vietnamese mercenary hunts a nomadic vampire cult across 1980s war-torn Uganda during an Ebola outbreak. A South Vietnamese mercenary. The only thing is we're missing is the sort of personal connection that your character has to this. Like, we don't have an adjective for this guy. We don't have some kind of like relationship between him and this cult. Is this this is the kind of thing where, you know, there's so many martial arts stories that are like, that one guy just has to beat up a bunch of bad guys, right? But the bad guys, murdered his father, right? Or his master or something like that. So I think we're just missing some kind of thing that is emotionally motivating your main character to be on this journey. So besides that, it's a cool setting and sounds very unique. So nice work, Joe. The connection's still in progress. No problem. So keep working on that, and you'll have a very strong logline, I think. Let's go down to Nick. Read it. Give us Grow Up.
Okay. Nacho gave me some advice, so I edited mine a little bit, but I'll just read the original.
Go ahead.
After his middle school friends abandon him during the first week of high school, a childish, imaginative team attempts to win them back with over-the-top fantasy scenarios, but when his best friend and love interest give him an ultimatum, he must either abandon his playfulness or be a loner forever.
All right, and then is this edited one the current version though?
Yeah. I didn't have time. Because I didn't have time to put in the stakes at the end, even though maybe based on what you said, it might be implied. But yeah, the edited one, I guess, is the current one. So I can.
Okay, I'll look at that one then. So after his middle school friends abandon him during the first week of high school, okay, that's your inciting incident. A childish, imaginative teen attempts to win them back with fantasy reenactments. What does that mean?
Yeah, so like essentially I guess like the setup in Act 1 would probably show them just like, playing Star Wars or something, Lord of the Rings or something, and then after they kind of abandon him, he like spends a bunch of time and money to kind of create the set pieces and stuff like that in an attempt that they will kind of join him and like keep playing, so to speak. If that makes any sense.
So like kind of LARP scenarios. Do you know what I mean by that? Is that what he's making here?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Okay, so a LARP being live action role playing. So he hires a bunch of like actors and stuff in order to get his friends to play in some sort of large scale game.
I wouldn't think it's that like grand or like high budget, but I mean, I think he does most of the work like himself. But yeah.
Okay, so what's the majority? What's the second act of the movie then? Though, what are we watching in the like? What do we see snippets of in the trailer? What are we watching people do for the majority of this?
Like he's like probably like setting up like play guns and stuff and trying to like get them to join along, but they keep like rejecting him and stuff like that.
Okay, so this is sounding more like this doesn't sound that dramatic to me, is the only thing. This sounds more like a coming of age comedy, don't you think so? I mean, a drama would typically have higher stakes than this.
Yeah, but I was gonna think in the end he does like he fails essentially, and he has to like he basically fails, and it's more like tragic, I guess, like a loss of childhood.
Okay, so it's not funny. The entire story you're saying is just a dead serious movie about a guy who dresses up in a costume and tries to get his friends to play some sort of fantastical reenactment of a childhood game.
I don't think it's like so humorless, but I don't think like comedy is like the main kind of point of the movie.
Okay, it's an interesting one for me. It's original, but I'm just not quite seeing what the sort of finish line is. Are we saying that is the implication that if his friends play this whole game with him, then they will, like be his friend again?
Like yeah, his goal is that, or he just wants to be their friends again, but he doesn't really understand that they don't want to like take place in the games that they see as childish, but he still enjoys.
So it just seems like your main character is just delusional. Is that the case?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
So your character from the offset, where like his goal is not possible, right? And doesn't even seem to be working.
Yeah, it's not supposed to work.
So I'm just confused as to what the fun and games of this, like, why is this going to be super entertaining to watch if it's not funny and we're just watching a guy fail at an impossible goal? And the situation of all of that is so kind of outlandish and over the top. I'm just struggling to see exactly how this thing would come together. Maybe you have some incredibly unique vision. I mean, help me out. Is there something I'm missing here?
It's just supposed to be like kind of like a tragedy almost, but it's like not as like kind of it's like on a little kid scale, if that makes any sense.
Ray says maybe the tone is comic, but not in a broadly comic way, kind of like Little Miss Sunshine with a downer ending. Is that the case? It's sort of like a dramedy?
Yeah.
Okay. I was thinking when first reading this is going to be sort of like, something like Be Kind, Rewind, and sort of like that's a Michelle Gondry movie, isn't it? Yeah, some kind of like lower stakes comedy, I thought, or like a Jared Hess movie almost. I guess I'm just struggling to see how these things come together at the moment, and I'm struggling to see why the situation is inherently sort of entertaining. It like, can you name two comps for this? Like, what is something that this is kind of like?
Well, I guess it would be like something like Napoleon Dynamite, except it's like the end is it's like the answer is no, like he does not succeed.
Okay.
It is like it's like a coming of age, but like it's like sad. It's not supposed to be like he like he does quote unquote come of age, but like it's like at like
he comes to realize that life is
it's
unfair.
like a very high cost. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, hard to give feedback on this one, I guess.
Yeah,
there's a way that it
lot
could
of
work.
other ideas because like I just or it was in the intro section. You said like, okay, well, it's best to kind of be like detached from your ideas. So I kind of just like
Yeah, for
came
sure.
up with,
No,
like,
you're
10
totally right.
ideas super fast. So I could I shared a lot of the other ones in the ideas and log lines. If you don't think that this one would be a good idea for the boot camp class, I have a lot of other ones that we could.
Okay,
go
no,
over.
it's totally up to you. I don't mean to shoot this one down. I just mean to say I'm not quite seeing the hook, or like I'm just having trouble picturing the movie. Maybe you have some really elaborate or like some really clear way in your mind of doing it. In which case, if this is the one you're most excited about, then you should. But you should just do the one that you are most excited about. Is what I would say.
Yeah, I thought that it was where this one is just like the most like all the other ones are more fantastical, and I've never really experienced anything similar. But could I possibly
yeah,
share another
totally up
one
to you.
and then see maybe
Sure, if you want to.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's check with Nacho. Speak no evil. Is this real? Oh, you did. Okay. Okie doke. Let's go to How to Disappear with Slaughter. I think we looked at part of this before.
Yeah, I talked about it in the preliminary class or whatever you call it, and then actually talked with Nacho about it earlier. I still can't refine this. I mean, and as I mentioned, it's 2 sentences. So I'll read it. A black sheep son, hellbent on stopping the systematic abuse of animals, recruits a group of animal rights activists to help commandeer his callous father's slaughterhouse. When the plan to subject the human captives to the psychological terror being led to the slaughter turns deadly, the son must choose. This part I just don't really like, but I cannot figure out how to distill it down or make it specific to what I have. The son must choose how far he's willing to go to protect his own self-serving agenda. I'm having a really hard time I don't know why, because I can tell you in my mind what I think or what I have happening in the second part of the film, but I can't for the life of me put it into like a sentence.
Okay, so let me see this again. So a black sheep son, hellbent on stopping the systemic abuse of animals. We can't have a comma there. Recruits a group of militant animal rights activists to help commandeer his callous father's slaughterhouse. When the plan to subject the human captives to the psychological terror of being led to slaughter turns deadly, the son must choose so red flag here, must choose how far he's willing to go to protect his self-serving agenda. Sounds like something that would be implied. It doesn't. When anyone's in any situation, they have to choose how far they're willing to go to do it. So I would find a way to frame it around a goal. like a more
Absolutely.
concrete goal.
So let me just tell you what specifically happens, and maybe we can reframe this. So the idea of turning deadly, we talked about this a few days ago, but it's when one of the captives, one of the captives escapes, kills the activist who's like torturing him. All the activists, including the son, are wearing like various animal masks. He puts on the mask, the guy who escapes, and begins stalking and tracking down the various activists and killing them, which leads to a confrontation with the son, which I would say is probably the climax of the movie. So that's, in a nutshell, what happens in the second act.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Or
yeah,
from
just
the
try to
midpoint.
find a more concrete goal for the main character.
So,
It sounds like you go ahead.
yeah, sorry. Okay, so what Nacho suggested was, I mean, the protagonist finding the killer or trying to confront the killer. I wasn't quite sure how to like frame it. The reason I have self-serving agenda, I'll explain that, is because as things go south, the main character, the protagonist, goes into like self-preservation mode, and then it's all about like just trying to get away with it, which includes.
Let me ask this: who in any story for the most part is trying to not serve their own self-serving agenda? Isn't that called just doing your goal? Isn't that called just doing what you want to do?
So, no, I agree. It's not. I don't like the wording of it either. What it means is he also even turns on his own, like, the activist. Like, he does everything he can to basically get away with this. Keep his identity.
Well, but wouldn't we assume that he would be doing that? Okay, so let me
guess
let me
yeah. Maybe.
So give me a second. Okay, so
Sure.
the son of a slaughterhouse guy goes hires a group of activists and goes to that slaughterhouse. They kidnap everyone there. Then what happens?
So after they take over the slaughterhouse, they begin to basically subject the human captives to various methods in which, like, say the ways in which the animals are put to slaughter. So, I think I gave this example.
Okay, so they're killing them with like the bolt pistol and the stuff like that.
But they're not actually killing them. They're like going all the way to the point before they kill them.
Okay,
They're putting them in the cages, and like if pigs are going to be gassed, they're not actually gassing them, but they're making them experience that terror that the animals are feeling.
Okay, I'm with you now. I think I see what you're saying. So you're saying the inciting. It's not like, forget about where this happens, but what gets the story going is when an animal rights stunt goes wrong and someone dies. I'm guessing you're saying like someone actually gets killed at some point.
Yes. So it goes from
go ahead.
Yeah. No. So like when he recruits these people, the idea is that not to kill anybody. And it basically, the way he presents it to him is like, do you want to make some real change? Like, you're protesting and whatever else you're doing doesn't do shit. Do you want to make some real change? Let's, do this. And so once it goes wrong, then it goes wrong. Once it escalates to someone getting killed, then it's like, oh shit, none of them have really any idea. They're kind of in over their heads at that point, because they didn't intend for that to happen. And the guy who kills the person and escapes is, I don't know, for lack of a better word, is a like psychopathic badass, you'd call him. He's like the floor manager, the guy who runs the slaughterhouse, basically.
Okay, so I'm going to type in the chat a way to sort of probably revise this. This is closer to something like Green Room, I think, where the thing that gets the movie going is the situation going wrong or going out of control.
Yeah.
So when an animal activist stunt describe the location itself, goes deadly or goes wrong or whatever, and your character must survive, get to shelter, contain the situation, find a way to express what he's actually trying to do. Before it kills his whole team, however you want to sort of frame the stakes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's you brought up Green Room the other day too, and I did rewatch it just to kind of remember. Like, I just wanted to think about it. So it's like, I guess the difference is like, it's just the premise is flipped, where in Green Room they are like, they're not infiltrating the place. I mean, it's a new environment, but they're
stuck there. Yeah,
they witness the murder, versus the son and the activists are like the perpetrators, so to speak. I guess it's like they're the ones who infiltrated. So I guess I just have to like figure out how to kind of flip the premise, or in terms of
Yeah,
logline.
exactly.
Okay.
And as long as it in a thriller, it shouldn't seem like your protagonist has the upper hand. So that's why I think it'll be nice to say, like, when the situation goes bloody or out of control, then he needs to now, contain the situation and get out alive, something like that.
Okay. Yeah. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Ray says the main character is the purpose. I understand it. Yeah, he's saying the main character is the leader of this kind of animal rights stunt that involves infiltrating this slaughterhouse. That's right.
Mhm.
All right. Let's see. What else do we have? We have about 13 minutes left. Who is next? I guess maybe are we down to Nacho if we've done the main ones that we've seen here? Below meaning after her?
Yeah,
Yes.
I can go if there's no one else.
Yeah, go ahead,
besides
Ray.
Nacho. Okay. Just scroll. When a small town ex-pro wrestler with the power to control the weather has a chance to get back at his enemies in the global wrestling network, his daughter must choose between loyalty to her father and her own dreams of stardom.
Okay. That's very unique. Let me ask, whose story is this, though?
This is why I have a lot of trouble with the logline. It's from the point of view of the daughter. But the premise is very much like tied to what's going on with the dad.
It would seem, though, that the dad's story has significantly higher scope and stakes, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's like a family movie. So and kind of a lot of the plot is built around not entirely knowing his motivations and what he's actually going to do. So that's why I kind of struggle with the logline.
Okay, what does it mean when you say he's trying to get back at his enemies in the global wrestling network? Like, people in the wrestling network betrayed him or something?
Yes. So my like one sentence dumb pitch is a lot easier to deal with than my logline, which is it's a pro wrestling. It's an adaptation of The Tempest set in the world of pro wrestling.
Okay.
And
with superpowers.
What's that?
With superpowers too.
Yeah, with like some light superpowers. Although The Tempest also has superpowers, but it is important to make clear that it has the superpowers as well, because wrestling doesn't always. But yeah,
this sort of takes place within the kayfabe or the fiction of pro wrestling, kind of like you're saying. This is sort of taking like Nacho Libre or something like that, where the sort of the gimmicks and the hooks and the backstories of pro wrestling are just kind of real, like that kind of thing.
Not quite. It's basically realistic. Wrestling is kayfabe, except if you're a really amazing wrestler and you really are connecting with the crowd and really truly getting over and really truly in the groove, just for a second, that will actually enable you to gain superpowers temporarily. And sometimes those superpowers seem like, oh, you're stopping time. But does it feel that way? Are you controlling the weather, or is it just a coincidence? And part of the main arc of it is this sort of doubt over whether or not her father's powers are real, which they sort of turn out to be spectacularly real at the end.
Okay. So this is all very cool and it's very interesting and unique, but it seems like it seems like you're weighting both of these things. These are like two separate levels of story. You have the one that sounds like what is more urgent and more a bigger scale and bigger scope and bigger importance is the first one. And then transitioning from there into his daughter must choose between her loyalty to her father and dreams of stardom. Do you mean she wants to be a wrestler too?
Yeah, she is a wrestler. She's very good. So yeah, this is why I don't really like it. I just felt like I had to get her in there. And they happen at the same time and are basically the same thing. What happens is all of his enemies on a touring bus, like all the people who betrayed him, plus some other people, some other wrestlers from the big wrestling company. They're touring through Michigan, and their bus crashes, and then they're trapped in this tiny town where he's been running the this indie wrestling promotion in this little town, like for the past couple of decades. His young daughter, who knows she's talented and wants to get out of this tiny town, join the global wrestling network and be a star, has like an opportunity to impress these people that have like crash landed or bus crashed into the town where she lives. But what her father is doing is he is an elaborate revenge on the people who betrayed him. So he challenges them to a showdown, which is part of his revenge.
Okay. But does the main character, the girl, does she have a tangible goal?
Yeah, she wants to get out of town and be a wrestling star.
Okay, but then that doesn't have anything to do with what's going on with her dad?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, just because like her dad is the one who doesn't want her to wrestle except in his promotion, and so she's still a teenager, so he's a little bit controlling. He won't let her try to go wrestle anywhere else because he tells her that she's not ready yet. He still has to teach her more about how to be a great wrestler. And then when these people come to town, it's like her opportunity, because they're like, they're like a very thinly veiled analog for the WWE. They're like the only game in town. She's like, oh, they're here. I have the chance to like impress them. She develops a relationship with the daughter of her father's old enemy, is one of the main things she does.
Okay. So ultimately, I like the elements here, but I think you're going to want to rephrase this by talking about your main character first, because it's throwing off the balance of this to start with the guy that you're saying is not the protagonist. And it's making it difficult to see how these stories are going to intertwine, or by how the daughter, by working towards her goal, is going to be like interacting with this other story going on. Like if you have a story that's like teenager wants to be a wrestler, parent doesn't want them to be. I see how those goals are in opposition, but you're sort of saying her dad is doing a revenge quest and a girl wants to be a wrestler. And I'm not seeing how those things are connected to each other. So this might be helpful if you just start with, try to figure out what the inciting incident is and frame this in terms of like the girl first and foremost. Does that make sense, Ray? How that might make it like a little clearer how what the sort of backbone, what the A story of this is? Because right now it's unclear which is this, like an A and a B story, or is this the same story somehow? That it's just a little unclear to me, or as it currently is written.
Gosh, yeah, no, that's why I wanted to share it, because I think the story is pretty well worked out, but I really hate this log line because I struggle with it a lot. But I don't know, is it like logistically reasonable, do you think, to start with the event maybe?
What's the event?
The crash landing of the bus. The bus full of the people from the GWN crashes into
yeah. That probably does sound like the right place to start. So when that happens, a blank girl must then blank, or else blank is how I would kind of probably rethink this one.
Right, that's pretty helpful, yeah, because it's just basically the whole Tempest premise is sort of important to otherwise it just becomes a very standard sports story, but it's really hard to start with her.
I see. Yeah. It's just
important to start with her. That's what I meant.
I think that this puts you on the right track, though. Do you have any questions about this one?
No, thank you so much. This was super helpful.
No, thank you. All right. Looks like do we have one more?
I got one.
Go
But
ahead.
I couldn't type it in the class for some reason.
You can't type it?
Oh.
Okay, no problem. Just go ahead and read it out for us then.
So basically, it's a young girl born with supernatural powers must take on her role as the next family medium. And if she continues to run away from it, then not only will her family face great generational curses continuously after she has had kids, but also the rest of the world may also suffer because of her decision.
So, what genre is this, please?
This would be like sci-fi and drama.
Sci-fi drama. Okay. I'm having trouble picturing what we're watching someone do in this movie. And what's the danger? What's the urgency? Is there an antagonist?
Yeah, so the antagonist I think would be like if you were thinking on the supernatural side, then you would consider like ghosts, demons, and ghouls and things like that, right? Basically those are their antagonists, and there are also people out there with the same kind of supernatural powers, but they are trying to eliminate her as well, and she has kind of almost no idea, but she's running from it. And what is at stake is basically, her family could potentially face lots of hardships, such as death, really terminal illnesses that nobody can detect or cure, and just more, I guess, tragedy, as well as the rest of the world.
Okay. With this, I'm still having trouble exactly telling what we're doing. So maybe start off with something more like, what is the inciting incident? So what's the event that sets the story in motion? So when that inciting incident occurs, your adjective protagonist, so you're a young psychic, or however you want to phrase it, has to do what tangible goalposts, what actual achievable thing does she have to do?
Okay, so she is a medium, so she basically has to channel the other side, like other spirits and deities, to get messages and to be able to allow other people to connect with them so they can know exactly how to navigate their own life while they're still alive.
Okay, that kind of sounds like the setup to a TV show, though. That sounds like a series of situations, not one thing that she has to do. Because, remember, movies are about one quest that character has to do that's of significantly high stakes. So I would just try to find. Go ahead.
I didn't really give it a film, or I didn't give it a format yet. It was just, but we can do.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just thinking if you can be more specific with this one in terms of what we're watching the main character do. So what is her actual goal? If this is going to be like a treasure hunt kind of movie where she's trying to find some specific artifact before bad guys do, then we want to know that. Try to give us a sense of who the antagonist is and what the villains are, kind of trying to how they're opposing your main character in the logline, because we want to know, what is the conflict going to really be.
So basically, she has to hone in on her powers. That's what this is all about. She has powers that she's running away from, and her family's basically banking on her taking on that role, accepting who she is. And the antagonists are the other people that has the same powers and trying to keep her away from that. They can come in the form of friends and other family members, even strangers or actual ghosts and ghouls, even sometimes in her dreams. And the way it's affecting her is basically they're, I guess, invading her mind, her thoughts, and I guess trying to control her mind in a way. And that's where other people come in, they'll try to cast spells on her to keep her under severe or really heavy surveillance. And if she tries to open the doorways for herself, then basically they attack her in many forms, like fears and nightmares, and also just in the physical realm where her friends kind of turn on her and really leave her when she's at her weakest.
Okay, gotcha. All right, so we're out of time for the class, so we do have to wrap this up. But I will say, try to get a sense of those antagonistic forces in the logline. So give us the inciting incident as well. So when blank important thing happens, main character must give us the conflict, what she's actually trying to achieve, the goalpost for whatever her objective is, or else, villain, give us, suggest what that what the main obstacle will be and what your main character is going up against.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
All right, thanks so much, guys. So you can either buy this course on its own, scriptcamp.net/classes, or you can start the free trial for unlimited membership by clicking this link here. Thanks, Nacho. Scriptcamp.net/membership. So if you're planning to enroll, go ahead and click that emoji there to get access to the bootcamp channels and join. Go ahead. Ooh, our first celebrity. Love your work.
I just want to check to make sure I'm available. So this is only Fridays, 5 to 7 PST. Is that correct? Oh, okay, okay. Oh, I guess everyone was just introducing their log lines and we got a little behind.
Yeah, did we run an hour long, or how do we? That's why I was confused about the time. I was like, did daylight savings happen? What happened here? Whoops. I totally lost track of time. All right, great. So that was going to end. Oh, go ahead, Nacho. Yep. Thanks, guys. Thanks for being here, and you will also have access to, by signing up, our video library to watch these classes back. So you'll always be able to see the previous ones, not this one because my camera was not cooperating with the program. But for most of them, we have videos to go over. We have a YouTube channel. We stream on Twitch and Discord and Twitter and YouTube. So you can check us out on there. Ray says, technical question, when's the next time we're going to run this? I don't think the timing will work out for this one, but it might be helpful for the future. So these are this is an 8-week program. So a new one will be starting about 8 weeks from now. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's like the middle of April. So 15th through 22nd.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Ray. We're gonna call it for tonight. So work on your logline for next time. Start filling out those sketchbooks with all your unsorted kind of ideas and ideas for characters, scenes, locations, lines of dialogue, stuff like that. Does someone have a question?
No, that's all for me.
All right. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great night. Hope to see you around soon.
Well. You too.
Not sure. Yeah, I'm just gonna decide which one I'm doing. Yeah, so essentially, yeah, I was just so if we do 2 months of the $49 one, then that'll be the whole length of this course, right? Or no? You said there was also something on Wednesday or Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. What is that?
Uh, so the next class. Well, you said it was like 2 weeks free, but I just kind of want to know: do we pay the 49 first, and then it's free? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Um, and you already posted when the next class will be, right? Mm-hmm.
Um, all right, thank you very much. I have a couple questions. First of all, for the Wednesday and Thursday classes, I have a college on those days. Could we possibly get a recording of that if we decide to join the paid course? Yeah, right. That makes sense. Thanks. That's great. And then just a question for the specific class. Uh, yeah, like Connor feedback gave me a little bit of doubt on the grow up concept, and I don't want to be like, starting at a place where, the concept itself is broken. Could I possibly do the outlining if I have time for more than one and then just see if it's like, works or not? Yeah. Yeah, okay. Oh no, yeah, I just meant I have some extra time this week. I could try to outline more than one of the log lines, but I probably should continue with that. Yeah, yeah, all right. Oh yeah, all right. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'll be refining which logline I'm doing and cleaning it up over the next day or two. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. Have a good
All right,
night.
thank you very much. Have a good night.